Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 42, featuring the top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure Episodes. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight, we're actually changing it up just a bit, because in our last episode, we talked about planning to do our top 5 DS9 Guilty Pleasure episodes, but we had some scheduling conflicts, so we switched it up, and we just went right down the line. So instead, we're doing our top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure episodes, which is going to be awesome because we love Voyager here at TrekRanks, and because we have 2 awesome guests to go through this topic with us tonight. First up is TrekRanks regular Alex Perry, who's been with us a few times, and was most recently on our Trek Mount Rushmore show on episode 36 from STLV this summer. Welcome back, Alex. Are you? Are you? That is Commander Book, the alley cat. Every evening at dusk, he walks around the house prowling like an alley cat. Like just looking for a fight for somebody. So, but welcome back, Alex.
Thank you, Jim, and may I say I am a very poor substitute for Carlos Miranda, our good friend talking Deep Space Nine, but I will endeavor to do my best.
Right, we were supposed to have Carlos Miranda on, along with Lee Nostromo, who's a prolific podcaster for the Nerd Party, and they're both over in the UK base, but we just couldn't make the time. The timing worked this time, but we're going to get them on. We're going to save that episode until we can get those guys looped in. So for now, we're just rolling with Voyager, and it's going to be fantastic because we got Alex on, and our other guest is Heather Kirby. Like I knew it was coming. Because our other guest is Heather Kirby, who is at NerdyGal33 on Twitter, who we've been communicating a lot with over the past months and year via TrekRanks, always with the awesome picks. So Heather, welcome to the show. It's great to finally have you on.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk some Voyager tonight.
I can't wait to talk Voyager. Yeah, this is going to be an awesome topic to go through with you guys. So, Heather, let's talk to you a little bit and get your Trek origin story, which is something we like to do with our first-time guests here on TrekRanks. So, how long have you been watching Trek, and how'd you get into it?
Well, I first started watching Trek when I was in elementary school, I think, probably about 8 or 9 years old. I started with TNG. I was a huge TNG fan growing up, and as much as like that was in like the mid 90s, so DS9 and Voyager was still on, I was kind of had the kid mentality where TNG was my favorite and I didn't want to watch anything else. But I always considered myself a fan of Star Trek in general, and actually once the Kelvin timeline came out, I was a huge fan of the Kelvin movies, but it was actually Discovery, which I like to say reignited my Trek fire. And so after watching season 1 of Discovery, I went through and watched everything.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you, so you're now a completionist.
I am a completionist when it comes to the series. I still have a couple original series movies that I need to watch yet.
Okay, cool. And I remember, now you just finished watching Voyager all the way through, right?
Voyager was the last one that I finished because I started with Enterprise and I watched them in chronological order. So Voyager was the last one I finished just about a month ago. All
right. Well, perfect timing for this topic. This is the second time that we're doing the guilty pleasures topics. We did the first one on TNG when we got to talk about a lot of deep cut episodes that really haven't been featured too much on TrekRanks. So I feel like that's on the docket for us tonight with all these topics. So let's jump into our quick TrekRanks recalibration, which begins every week with General Order number 1 here at TrekRanks. and that is that we love Trek, and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started, because our favorite thing to do is to talk about Star Trek, and that is why this podcast exists.
But what is that Vulcan motto? Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And what is diversity? But a celebration of differences.
And as T'Pol and Dr. Phlox just said, TrekRanks is basically just a big old celebration of differences. There are no wrong answers here at TrekRanks. Our show is about all the reasons that we love Star Trek. We're not here to nitpick or argue, but just to celebrate the greatness of Trek. So we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast. But of course, tonight is just all about Voyager.
Open hailing frequencies. Hailing frequencies open. On viewer.
And if you'd like to contact TrekRanks, the best way to do that is to find us on Twitter at TrekRanks, or me directly at Enterprise Extra. You can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. And for those of you enjoying all of our shows here on the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network, you can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And to wrap it up, Alex and Heather, why don't you guys let everyone know how they can get a hold of you? Alex?
You can find me on Twitter anytime to talk Star Trek. I'm at Alexander T. Perry.
All right. And Heather, tell us I mentioned your Twitter handle before, but mention that. But also talk about this. You guys just started a fan community outreach on Twitter with some other awesome Twitter folks. Why don't you talk about that really quick?
Yeah, well, me and a bunch of my wonderful Twitter friends decided that we wanted to help reach out and support positive fandom. And so we started a page called Fans Together. And our primary goal is to encourage fans to support causes, charitable causes that are close to them or to their favorite actors and TV shows. So you can follow our fan page on Twitter at together_fans.
I love it. That's a good fit for TrekRanks, where we keep it pretty much universally positive. That's what TrekRanks is all about. Awesome. And you're at NerdyGal33 on Twitter, right?
At NerdyGal33, and my username is very long. It's never apologize for being nerdy, because you should never apologize for that.
I have seen that. I love it. All right, let's jump into our Level One Diagnostic and get this show rolling.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
So this week's diagnostic cycle is pretty important for us to define. I think, what we all think of when we think of a guilty pleasure in terms of storytelling. So from my end, a guilty pleasure can really mean anything. It can be, it's really whatever it is to you. So it can be an episode that you love, but maybe that other people, or you think other people don't like it that much, or people make fun of it you see online, or maybe it's an episode that you actually don't think is very good, but there's just something about it that you like. And maybe it's just a scene or a particular moment or the overall tone or something that you like in it. But for some reason, this connects with you. Obviously, we love all Trek, so no Trek is really a guilty pleasure, but we like to use this tag just to kind of dig a little bit deeper on maybe some of the episodes that you think people aren't looking at in the same way you are. So before we get into the Prime Directive for everyone, I want to ask Alex and Heather, what's something non-Trek that you guys would label as a guilty pleasure for yourself? So anything like a movie or a book or TV show. Alex, what's a non-Trek guilty pleasure for you?
So keeping it Gene Roddenberry, I am a fan of the mid to late 90s Canadian television show Earth Final Conflict, which was based off of a script that Gene Roddenberry wrote. It is objectively not a good show, but I really enjoyed it. There was a ton of stuff about it that I liked. The idea being that in the near future, an alien race comes to Earth with the promise of sort of lifting Earth up technologically, but they have this hidden agenda, and the show is meant to kind of unravel the hidden agenda. And it had actually quite a strong first season, and then sort of slowly went off the rails until it turned into just a flaming garbage pile. But I actually really enjoy the show, even the later seasons, and I'm pleased to see it's up on Amazon Prime, and it's made its way up my list of shows to watch.
That is a great guilty pleasure pick. I watched the first season, and I just got kind of bored, so I just didn't continue with it. A lot of talking.
Yeah, as I say, objectively, not a particularly good show, and like really low budget, and that's why a lot of it was just talking.
Yeah.
But there was something about it that I really liked, and so I stuck with it.
And not necessarily that there's anything wrong with a lot of talking. It was, you could tell there was a lot of talking because they couldn't do anything else.
Exactly, it was a lot of talking, describing bigger scenes that they didn't have the money to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, Heather, how about you? What's a non-Trek guilty pleasure for you?
Well, the first thing that came to my head when you said that was the movie from, I believe it's the early 2000s, the movie version of Daredevil, the Ben Affleck movie.
Oh, yeah, that movie's great.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
As much as people will universally say that movie is absolutely horrible, I have such a soft spot for it because it's what introduced me to the character of Daredevil. Because I'm not a big comic person. I like to read, but there's just something about comics that I always had issues reading them.
Right.
But the movie actually introduced me to the character Daredevil. So even though the movie itself has a lot of issues, it's a guilty pleasure of mine because it made me fall in love with Daredevil.
That's a great pick. It's funny when you said that, I immediately went to Elektra for some reason. I forgot about that Ben Affleck movie. That's funny.
And Michael Clark Duncan was a fabulous Kingpin.
Oh, he was. He was fantastic.
That's a great pick. All right, so I already ran through this exercise, and we did the TNG Guilty Pleasure episodes back on show number 35. And I'm not going to do it again because I thoroughly embarrassed myself and my entire family and basically 3 generations of Moorhouses, because I revealed to everyone that I watch and enjoy trashy Bravo television shows like Real Housewives. And
That's right.
Rules and that kind of garbage. So I'm still trying to live that down. So we're going to move on now and I think jump into our Prime Directives as we break down exactly how everybody made their picks tonight.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
So, Heather, let's start with you. What was your Prime Directive in picking your top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure episodes?
So I kind of took a page out of Thad's book, who was on your TNG Guilty Pleasures, and his Prime Directive, and I went a more analytical route with it because one thing I realized is that I have a hard time telling what I should feel guilty about and what I should just like anyway. So I went on IMDb and I found I basically took every Voyager episode that had a rating of 65% or lower, which ended up to be about 16 episodes.
Wow. Okay. Only 16.
Yeah. Only 16.
That's cool.
But even from that list, like there were a bunch that jumped out at me that I knew that I liked. But I went through and watched them anyway because we all enjoy watching them.
TrekRanks homework.
Yeah. So I just from that list of 16, I just picked the 5 that were my favorite.
All right, I'm super excited. So, are you going to have the IMDb number just like Thad did?
I do have the IMDb number with it. Yep.
That is awesome. That is Thad at Tyrannicus, who we've had on a couple of times, who is awesome. Okay, Alex, how about you? How did you break it down?
Mine was somewhat similar. The IMDb route was a good way to go because I just enjoy so many of the episodes that as Heather said, it's tough to kind of figure out what you're supposed to feel guilty about. And so I used not just IMDb, but there's a fun little database that lists all of episodes of Star Trek, and somebody went through all of the trouble of ranking all of them. I don't know if you've heard of this site. It's at www.TrekRanks.com. And I sort of tried to go with episodes that were either low on the IMDb rankings or that featured in the sort of bottom half of episodes on TrekRanks.
And might really annoy me? Is that where you're...
Yes, that's right. So that's kind of how I picked them. And there were a couple of episodes I had that I just decided that people liked them enough that I couldn't justify them as guilty pleasures. So I took them off the list.
Yeah, that's good. That's going to be part of my secondary systems, by the way. I have a list of, I feel like I considered these, but they're just too good to be considered guilty pleasures. So for different reasons, because I think they're too good, or because I know people like them enough that they're not a guilty pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, that's great. And like we said before, listen, we love all the Trek here on TrekRanks, so there's not a lot you can point to that's really bad or really truly a guilty pleasure. Voyager, there's some cheese in Voyager, and there's probably some episodes that people would label as bad, but not too much that I would point at in that way. So I really just looked at episodes that I generally believe most people don't like. So that was kind of my barometer, and really just on a subjective level. And I'm pretty confident that some of these I picked are ones that most people are going to be like, oh my gosh, that episode, which is kind of how exactly how I did my TNG list. So I think that's enough on the Prime Directive. I'm super excited about getting into the order of things, because we have 168 episodes of Voyager to choose from. And I know we're going to have some good deep cut selections to talk about. So third emoticon, let's get us into the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
And just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our original TrekRanks 5 words and a hashtag summary to tease our pick. Then we'll unveil our Voyager Guilty Pleasure episode and why we picked it. And at the end, we'll rattle off a few secondary system selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicates tonight, you'll know it when you hear the defiant torpedoes. This could go either way in terms of duplicates, so who knows? We'll see. All right, Alex, let's start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure episodes?
Okay, my 5-word summary is like the birds, Katerina, and my hashtag is Mechanical Woman Inside. It is season 4, episode 11, Concerning Flight.
Yes, this is why we're doing this episode. That is a guilty pleasure.
I love this episode.
By the way, that is bottom 10 at TrekRanks. I think it's like 160 something. Anyway, go ahead.
I do not feel guilty about watching this episode at all, and the fact that I saw it in the top 10 was what made me know that it had to be in the bottom 10 at TrekRanks is what made me know it had to be on my list. I really enjoy John Rhys Davis's performance as Leonardo da Vinci. I like this sort of experiencing the 24th century through the eyes of a Renaissance man. I like the sort of heisty kind of plot line that there is associated with the episode. It's fun. It's pretty energetic. And there's a decent amount of action in it as well. And even though it is riddled to the back teeth with plot holes, I really enjoy watching it. And it was also kind of the perfect way to end the Da Vinci kind of narrative that they'd had over a couple of episodes, and move on to something else. I really, really like this episode.
I always forget that. So this was the last Da Vinci appearance, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's great. It's
and that's the only thing you like about it?
No, I actually love Da Vinci. I love John Rhys Davies. I can never get his name right. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so.
I love him as Da Vinci. I love all his appearances. There is some good things about this episode. The initial heist is pretty good. The clunkiness of the execution at the end probably made this not one that I considered. But hey, it's TrekRanks. Of course there's no wrong answers. This is a great pick. and a super fun guilty pleasure for Voyager. Heather, what's your take on Concerning Flight?
I think it's an excellent pick. I love John Rhys Davies as Da Vinci, and the dynamic he has with Janeway, just the chemistry between the two of them is fantastic. It did not have a low enough score to be on my list, so it is not on one of my picks as well, but it's definitely a guilty pleasure for sure.
That is amazing to me. It's a phenomenal pick, and the alien is pretty good too. The one who kind of duped them or stole the stuff.
Yeah, the like slimy gangster.
The one thing I always think about this is that I always feel like they began with the ending, right? When they were putting it on paper, like, well, it's going to end with them flying away on a glider. And it's like, so how do we get to that point?
Yes.
All right, let's move on. Great opening pick. Heather, what's your number 5 pick?
Okay, number 5, Central America in the Delta Quadrant, hashtag a piece of home. It is season 2, episode 9, Tattoo.
Ooh.
So I went with this episode because I know a lot of people have issues with the way Chakotay's Native American heritage is played out in Voyager, but there's something about the story in this episode that just seems the most sincere out of all the different things they try to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of like the ancient mythology, like Mayan and Incan Aztec mythology, and there are stories about what they call gods coming to visit them and giving them knowledge. And so the correlation between that and the story in this episode about the aliens from the Delta Quadrant who visited Earth and gave Chakotay's people knowledge just made it a guilty pleasure for me.
Yeah, I actually could see that one being below 65% at IMDb. I think it's definitely not a popular episode amongst people. But again, awesome pick, because there is some good, I mean, I'm a Chakotay apologist. I like Chakotay. I always thought he was a pretty good character. Yes, at the end, he did fade because of some of the production challenges there with Robert Beltran and the producers, but I like the Chakotay character, and I love this pick. Alex, how about you?
Oh, I'm a big fan of any episode that involves alien sort of involvement in pre-24th century humanity.
Right.
You know, like Time's Arrow and Carbon Creek, and this episode kind of fits into that sort of general idea, which is a very cool thing about it. And I think also it's totally agree. The sort of the handling of the Native American aspects of the show was pretty problematic, I think. But I also remember hearing somewhere that is potentially not the fault of the producers, that they hired a Native American consultant who was basically a con man who didn't know anything about, who wasn't Native American but passed himself off as one, who just fed them a bunch of things that turned out not to be true. So perhaps that's not entirely their fault.
Well, at some level, it's still, and maybe I'm being ignorant when I say this, but there's still a helpful creation of awareness for the character and the society by having that character out there. So, or however they may have missed on some of the details and aspects, it certainly was nice to have a Native American representation in the show.
For sure.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And especially like the handling they do with the respect that they show, and at least showing his background and how that carries on to him is a big part of that character and that heritage that they actually do show in that episode that they don't really show in a whole lot of other episodes with him. So.
Yep. And one thing I always remember about that episode is that it was written by Michael Piller. So there you go. One of Trek's legends. Okay. I'm going to jump into my number 5 pick, my 5 words and a hashtag. First big Neelix Tuvok partnership, hashtag orbital tether to my heart. It is Voyager Season 3, Episode 19, Rise, which actually is pretty high at TrekRanks, number 65, and it's one that I always kind of apologize for. I just think this episode is unfairly maligned because I love episodes with a huge scope that really try to be big and tell big, huge stories. And this one, you got asteroids bombing this planet. They have a shuttle crash. They have to go on foot to this orbital tether. They try to go up the orbital tether to contact Voyager. There's just a lot going on. It's got a fun little mystery with the man-made asteroids and then the murder on the tether, and the Tuvok Neelix dynamic is really being explored here for the first time, where they're going after each other and Neelix is calling him out for treating him poorly. I will say that the actor who played Sklar in this is absolutely horrendous. Just, if you watch it again, he's really poor. He's probably a fine actor, but he did not connect well with this particular episode. But it's a Brandon Braga script, and I love this episode. So, Alex, what's your take on Rise?
My take on Rise is that my number 4 pick for Voyager Guilty Pleasure, 5-word summary, Neelix and Tuvok arc continues, #orbital tether, it's Rise.
I love it. We're going straight into the 4th round. I love when we have a consecutive duplicate pick. So Rise is on Alex's list too. All right, so why'd you pick Rise?
I really wanted to put an episode on that had a Neelix Tuvok storyline to it, because it's probably my favorite relationship in the whole show. And there was a previous episode of TrekRanks where I submitted a list that was all kind of Neelix Tuvok related moments. And the thing about that relationship is the other episodes in which they feature really prominently are actually all really, really good. And
right.
This is one that many people would consider not good, but I actually really enjoy it, again, because it spends a lot of time in the episode focused on the relationship between these two completely diametrically opposed characters, and sort of their ongoing journey to kind of appreciate and respect each other. Or I guess Tuvok's ongoing journey to appreciate and respect Neelix.
Right.
I've got a funny feeling about this.
I'm not interested in your funny feeling.
You're not listening to what I'm saying. Delirious or not, he said he needed whatever's up there. And what if it's something that can help us?
I will not debate this with you. Please pilot the craft and remain silent.
You're going to listen to me!
You are becoming emotionally distraught. There is little point in furthering this discussion.
I'll tell you who's being emotional. You. You hide it beneath that Vulcan calm, but the truth is you're filled with contempt and sarcasm, and I'm tired of being the target of all your hostility.
You are mistaken.
No, he's not. I can see it every time you talk to Neelix. You're dismissive and condescending.
You are projecting your own emotional bias onto my actions. I have no feelings toward Mr. Neelix.
That's right! That's exactly what I'm talking about. You have no feelings for me. But you have feelings against me. For 3 years, you've ridiculed me and made it obvious to everyone that you have no respect for me. And I've tolerated it. You know why? You know why? Because you are smarter than I am, Tuvok. And more logical and stronger and superior in almost every way. And I admire you. But you don't have any instincts. You don't have any gut feelings. And you don't really understand people. But non-Vulcans have feelings, and they have to listen to them, and I've got to listen to mine.
And yeah, I like it too. I mean, it's high concept. Orbital tether is, an idea that's kind of been around in science fiction for a really long time that Star Trek's never done anything with. And I think, some of the acting's pretty ropey, but that whole sort of, being confined in a small space with lots of different kinds of personalities, and some people have secrets, there's a lot to like about that.
Agreed. That part's fun. All right, Heather, how about you? What's your take on Rise?
It's not one that fit my Prime Directive, so it couldn't be that bad. But it's definitely, it has an interesting dynamic to it, with the characters stuck together on the tether. And I think it's an episode where Neelix really steps up, and
right.
he really shows that he's more than just the crazy comic cook, that he can be a badass sci-fi character too. So definitely a guilty pleasure.
I love that. We got all day for Neelix here at TrekRanks. We love him. All right, so we're already into round 4. So let's go to Heather. What's your number 4 pick?
Okay, number 4, Janeway and Tuvok have secrets. Hashtag the outrageous Okampan.
Ooh.
It is season 6, episode 23, Fury.
Yes.
So the main reason why I love this episode is the dynamic between Janeway and Tuvok, like it says in my 5-word summary there. As much as they highlight their friendship throughout the episode, there's so many good points, like the beginning of the episode where she tries to fake him out like he's in trouble, and then she gives him the birthday cake. And the fact that he's seeing visions and premonitions throughout the episode once Kes goes back in time, and she just believes him. Like, she doesn't question him at all. Their friendship is so tight that she believes there's something going on with him, no matter how weird it is. And she believes he's telling the truth. And that has a huge impact on the episode and the fact that they managed to not get destroyed by the Vidians.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you kind of you forget that the Chakotay Janeway part of this episode, because you end up focusing on the Kes storyline, which is obviously not the most popular one in Star Trek history. So I love that pick. That's a super deep cut, and I love the way you described it, because those two, I'm with you on their dynamic. It's always great to see it in that way. Alex, what's your take on Fury?
My take on it is that I am a big fan of this episode, and that's all I have to say for now.
Okay, so we may have another duplicate, so we'll move on in round 4 then. And my 5 words in a hashtag are: simple story has a real heart. Hashtag Flotter and Trevis. It is Voyager Season 5, Once Upon a Time. And I always find it's really easy to dismiss this episode as kind of like the kiddie show with a hollow kiddie storybook of Trevis and Flotter. But if you do that, you're missing the point that Trevis and Flotter are awesome. I love them. They really are. They're super cool creature design. They're really smart characters. I love their backstory with the sun and how they affect each other. And you also might miss that there's like this really amazing heartfelt moment in this episode where the Samantha Wildman part of this, where she's recording this amazing note to her daughter when she thinks she's going to die and not be there for her because the Delta Flyers crashed on some away mission. I really love that moment. I love the way Neelix dealing with it and trying to help Naomi through it. It's an underrated episode. And it's also the very beginning of the Seven and Naomi relationship, where I think she calls her the Borg lady or something in this episode. So I love it. I love the introduction of Flotter when she's throwing rocks in the water and he says, ouch. So it's all good. I think this is a fun episode that kind of gets unfairly maligned. Alex, what's your take on Once Upon a Time?
My appreciation for this episode has grown significantly over time. When I was, this will tell you how long ago it was, back when I owned this episode on VHS, it was packaged with Timeless. Right. And I think and Timeless was the second episode on the tape. And I think I would keep the tape at the halfway point and only rewind it halfway whenever I was done with it, because I just wanted to watch Timeless. But the episode's grown on me a lot as I've watched the show. I think for a lot of the reasons you pointed out, the sort of the family dynamic to it, which when I was a lot younger just entirely went over my head and wasn't something I particularly cared about. It resonates for me much more now at this point in life than it did back then. I think you're right. It is a really sweet episode, and it's got a sweetness to it that Star Trek did pretty rarely, and so for that reason, I think it deserves to be celebrated.
Yeah, I love that moment where Samantha's recording that message. So, Heather, how about you?
I love this episode. I love the world that they created for Slaughter and Trevis, and all the different colors and just the beautiful land there, the Forest of Forever.
The Ogre of Fire.
The Ogre of Fire, yes.
All right, let's move on to round 3 then. And Alex, what's your soup round? It's time for the soup round.
All right, 5-word summary. Voyager reenacts the Civil War. Hashtag, I'm not talking about the puppy. This is season 3, episode 11, The Q and the Gray.
Oh, man. Great hashtag. Great hashtag.
Which is kind of a dumb episode in which it felt like they started with, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have the Voyager cast dress up like Civil War soldiers, and just kind of worked backwards from that point to a story. And the opening scenes between Q and Janeway, in which Q is trying to seduce Janeway, are like really cringeworthy. But it's a Q episode, and I love every Q episode. And even though John Delancey probably gets some of the worst material in this episode to work with that he gets in any of the episodes he appears on, he still totally kills it and conveys this character with heart and charisma, and you really kind of feel the sort of struggle that he's having, and it's fun. I mean, even if the conceit behind it is a little thin, it is fun to kind of see the Q continuum as 19th century American Civil War battlefield, and to see other Q, which is always fun, and some of the repartee, and of course having Susie Plaxton as a Q is an utterly inspired choice. She does so well in this episode as this character of the female Q, and it's a shame we didn't get to see her again in the role.
Yeah, that's the truth. She's probably the best part about this episode, which for sure is a guilty pleasure. Heather, what's your take on Q and the Gray?
I agree with pretty much everything Alex said. I love Q, and I love Susie Plaxton, so to see her as a female Q was just fantastic. The storyline of this episode, especially in the beginning with Q trying to romance Janeway, is definitely cringeworthy. So that would definitely make it a guilty pleasure.
For sure.
It has the character moments, and just anyone involved in the Q continuum is such a character that makes it fun. Yeah,
and the moment about not talking about the dog, and of course the consummation at the very end is all that is pretty memorable. All right, Heather, what's your soup round pick?
Okay, so into the soup round, we have to fire off Defiant Torpedoes, because it is Slaughter and the Forest of Forever. Hashtag survive and prosper.
All right.
Once upon a time. And like I said, there's just something wonderfully colorful and fun about Slaughter and the characters, which that set amongst the darker tone of the crew being trapped and trying to get saved. I think it offsets each other really well.
I love it. Was your hashtag survive and prosper?
Survive and prosper, yes.
That's fantastic. That is so good. I mean, I keep coming back to it, but I mean, it's really worth people going back and checking it out. The Samantha Wildman recording that message is really a great moment in Trek. It just really hits home that she basically tells him at the end, don't worry, because Neelix is going to take care of you now. It's just really sweet. I love that moment.
Agreed.
Computer, begin recording. Encode message for delivery to Naomi Wildman.
Acknowledged.
Hi, honey. I know you're feeling sad right now, but I want you to listen to me very carefully, okay? First of all, I love you. Second, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. How smart you are, how funny, how kind you are to other people. And I know that you are going to grow up to do extraordinary things. Last, And I know this is a hard one. Try not to be scared.
Warning. Oxygen depletion in 10 minutes.
Listen to Neelix. He'll be taking care of you now. Bye, honey.
Alex, any other comments on Once Upon a Time?
Just to say that I enjoy any time we get a window into 24th century popular culture.
Right.
And that's what this is, right? Because these are like popular children's books in the 24th century. And we don't see that kind of thing a lot. I mean, you get the references in Deep Space Nine to, Vulcan Love Slave. And in Next Generation, there's the Dixon Hill novels, but you kind of get the sense that that's maybe an older thing that Picard likes because and it comes from the sort of 20th, 21st century. But we don't get a huge window into things that people in the 24th century like, and this is one of those things, and I love that about it.
We'll assume that the Vulcan Love Slave Hollow novel is at the other end of the store.
But yeah, that's an excellent point. Like, I love how it's something that Samantha Wildman passed along down to Naomi. Now she loves it. And even something that Janeway talks about at the very end of the episode, how she loved those characters as a kid. So
yeah, that's cool too. And I think Harry mentions it too. So love it. All right, let's close out the soup round. My number 3 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Underrated dissection of love's effect. Hashtag best tracking shot ever, which I kind of need to add a question mark to. It's Voyager Season 5, Episode 17, The Disease. And I'm really not sure why this one is so underappreciated. I always kind of think of it, I guess it's because Harry Kim's just not a very popular character, but I think this episode really works as an awesome dissection for what it means to fall in love and not be able to control yourself and not be able to control your instincts and like being infected by, and this little bonk on the head, but it's like a disease. And the chemistry here between Kim and Darren Tall, I think really works. I love that part of it. And I've always said this episode contains the greatest tracking shot in the history of Trek, which may no longer be true because there's one in the battle at the Binary Stars in Discovery that I think might have surpassed it, where they're going from the transporter room into the turbo lifts and onto the bridge. But this is a shot of Kim and Janeway arguing from the observation deck. They go through the bridge into Janeway's office. It's over 2 minutes long. The acting is incredible. The shot, the way they track through those 3 sets, the script, it's fantastic. I love the effects in this episode. I love this generational ship, the terrorist theme. I just think it's a cool episode, and I really enjoy it. And I'm curious what you guys say. Heather, what's your take on The Disease?
I like the story in this episode. I like the idea that they've run across this generational ship, and there's some people who don't agree and want to leave, right, and the whole terrorist aspect. I hate to say this, I'm not a big fan of Harry Kim. So
that makes sense, though. If there's a lot of people who don't connect with Harry Kim, we get that. He's not the most popular character in the history of Trek. So that kind of maybe proves my original point. That's maybe the main reason you don't connect with this episode.
Honestly, yeah, probably. If it could have been any other character in that position, like if it was like Chakotay instead of Harry, I'd probably connect with it more.
That says it all. I think that says it all. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways the fault here isn't this episode. It's how the character is treated in the rest of the show, because the character can be so bland at times that it can be quite jarring to watch this episode in which he sort of stands up for himself and, has that argument with the captain. And she too kind of feels that, in that long tracking scene where they end up in her office, like, for goodness sake, this isn't like you.
Right.
But it does make for a much more interesting character in the process. But it's just not what a lot of people are used to, even if they don't like what they're used to. And I think as a result of that, the episode suffers in a lot of people's perception. But you're right about a lot of what you say. I mean, there is some great directing in the episode. There is some great effects, and the idea behind it's really cool. It just doesn't land for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons I picked it, because for me, it's definitely a guilty pleasure, because I know it's not popular amongst other people. By the way, the director of this episode was David Livingston, who's the most prolific director in Trek history. And he was really going for it, because there's also a great tracking shot in the cold open to open this episode. And it is from outside the ship. They go all the way across the generational ship. The camera turns. They go through the window, and they go into Kim and Darren Tall having some kissy time. So, it was really, and that was another 2 minutes where there was no break. So really, really good stuff, I think, in terms of the production level of this episode. All right, let's move on to round 2. Yes, I just said kissy time, everybody. Okay. All right, let's move on to round 2.
Family podcast.
Alex, what do you got?
Okay, 5-word summary. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Hashtag new master of the EMH. It is Season 3, Episode 18, Darkling. The guiltiest of guilty pleasures.
I'm a little bit stunned that this just got picked. I need to hear why this is a guilty pleasure.
Rather than just being just bad.
Well, yeah, no, because it's so dark. This is a dark episode. It is a dark episode. It's hard to find anything to really like about it, because it feels real. It feels like, wow, the doctor is messed up. So I'm curious. So why'd you pick this?
Because Robert Picardo's performance is so over the top that for me, you get out of the darkness and into just totally campy territory.
That's good. Okay.
The episode, to my eyes, and I just rewatched it yesterday to confirm this, is high camp. There's this whole kind of, theme of darkness running underneath it. But and the first half of the episode is really boring, and the Kess kind of love storyline is also really boring. But around the halfway mark, when the dark personality asserts itself, and Bob Picardo's hair gets a bit mussed up, and put those weird contact lenses in, and he is just chewing up the scenery. I enjoy those scenes so much, because it's just, it is full on camp.
So you didn't like the guy with the mullet selling the maps, or?
No, I could have done without all of that.
Wait, is that the guy that got murdered?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's really awesome, because I really was interested why you picked this, and it's because it's so over the top campy, and I can see that. Heather, what's your take on Darkling?
Well, it is one of the episodes I watched to prepare for this. It did not end up on my list or on my secondary systems because it's so dark. I think it's just, especially when the dark personality takes over, it's such a drastic difference from the way the EMH typically is that you just sit there and go, wow.
Right.
That actually happened?
Exactly. I always struggle with this episode. Well, everyone who has listened to the show regularly knows one of the things I rank is by what I would like to watch. So if I can only choose one, what would I enjoy watching the most the rest of my life? And it's never Darkling, because it's so dark and depressing. But I will watch it with a new eye for the over-the-top campiness of Bob Picardo's performance. I like that angle. That's a good thought there.
I would wager that for all the time that you do this show, this will be the only occasion in which Darkling makes it into somebody's top 5 list.
I wonder, could we ever do the darkest top 5 darkest episodes? Because then this would definitely be in the running. You might be right. And that also might be true of every episode mentioned so far. As I look at the totals. Yes. All right, Heather, what's your round 2 pick?
Okay, round 2. Captains just want to have fun. Hashtag delete the wife. It is
yes.
Season 6, Episode 11, Fairhaven.
Fantastic.
I absolutely love this episode. I think it's there's not a whole lot going on. Like, the main plot is actually what's going on in Fairhaven, the nice little holographic Irish town that they've made and created. And I think it's just nice to see Janeway having a little fun. And she doesn't get to let her hair down that often because she has to be the captain and to sort of create this and play with this holographic character that she might be a little bit attracted to.
Maybe, just a little.
Because as she tells the doctor, that's the personal question.
Right.
It makes me smile.
And as she tells the computer, delete the wife, as you mentioned in your awesome hashtag. I love this pick. This was on my secondary systems. I really thought about picking Fairhaven, but did not. I always defend Fairhaven. It's super fun. I mean, I guess I get why it's not the most popular episode. Some of the caricatures are probably a little too broad, but I don't know. There's something fun about this, and I feel the same way about Spirit Folk. I like them both. So, Alex, how about you on Fairhaven?
I am so glad that a Fairhaven episode made it onto the Guilty Pleasures list.
Yep.
I mean, I talk about camp for Darkling, which is just my perspective. I mean, this episode is campy. I mean, it is so campy, and nobody can dispute that. And I think that's either to your taste or it isn't. And I think for a lot of people, it wasn't to their taste, and that's why this classifies as a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of those episodes where I get it. First time you watch it, you're disappointed. It's not what you were looking for. But, 15, 20 years later now, guess what? It's a pretty fun episode of some standalone Voyager. That's my take. I love this pick. All right, let's move on to my round 2 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Worth it for alien baby. Hashtag guilty pleasure. And I left that hashtag in there because I looked at my 5 words and a hashtag on TrekRanks.com. And I actually had that as my hashtag on this episode. Hashtag guilty pleasure. So I knew I had to pick it. And it is Voyager Season 2, Parturition. I love this episode. I've always liked it. It's the episode where Neelix and Tom Paris are having a jealousy tiff over Kes, and sure, the jealousy stuff with the Paris and Kes and Neelix isn't necessarily the greatest thing, but overall, I love the general setup of this episode. I love there's a ton of technobabble, and I'm a huge technobabble fan. I love the aliens in this episode, and I was sold on this episode the second they get into that cave and they find these eggs, and immediately the little alien hatchling breaks out of the egg. It's great puppet work. The alien is the cutest. I love animals. I love how Neelix and Paris, quickly put their differences aside to take care of this animal, which they quickly realize is a sentient baby. I just, I love this episode. I love when they feed them the trigemic vapors. And there's also some really smart and snappy dialogue going on. The guy who wrote this is his name was Tom Zalosi. He hasn't written too much else, but he was playing into the tropes of Trek. And Neelix says technobabble in this episode, which is super fun. And it opens with Janeway saying, let's go to Planet Hell, which are 2 awesome Trek tropes that people use and that are part of this episode, actually used in dialogue. All right, I've talked too much about Parturition, one of my favorite episodes. I love it. Alex, what's your take on this one?
I enjoy that it's sort of the resolution to the long simmering Tom Paris versus Neelix storyline, which I guess was one of the sort of reasons that the episode was written, was to try and put that particular story to bed. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a classic, 2 people go into a cave and have to overcome some difficulty and learn to put their differences aside and work together. And what's more Star Trek than that?
Yep. It's, it definitely plays into those Trek tropes. Heather, how about you?
I definitely agree with a lot of the points that were said. It did show up on my list of 16.
I figured it did.
It was not one that I picked, but only because there were others that I liked a little bit more than it. I enjoy the dynamic between Neelix and Tom in this episode, and especially the fight, the spaghetti fight.
Yeah, that's right. It's
in the mess hall beforehand.
Yeah, that's a great moment. I can't remember what it's called, but the actual hair pasta.
Yeah. And then they end up in Janeway's office still covered in hair pasta.
That's right. It's really a clever script. There's a lot of good lines. Like when there's a moment where they're talking about leaving the baby behind.
This creature's going to have the ability to stand up, right? Has the skeletal system of a humanoid. It's cold-blooded, has reptilian epidermis. Its brain is significantly larger than most reptilian species. I'd say we're dealing with a sentient life form here, Neelix.
If this species is sentient, wouldn't that suggest that its parents might return to care for it?
It's hard to say. Most common reptiles lay their eggs and never return to protect them.
I think we've established we're not dealing with a common reptile.
True. If this thing does have a mother, I'd say we don't want to be around when she gets back. Come on.
Oh, we can't just leave it here.
We're not leaving it here. Its mother left it here. We just happened to wander in.
But we blocked off the cave. The mother might have been trapped outside.
We'll leave the door open for her when we go, okay?
Really, there's a lot of clever back and forth dialogue like that. So anyway, I like this episode a lot. All right, let's move on to round one. Our top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure episodes. Alex, what's your number one pick?
All right, here it is. 5-word summary. Kes returns for her revenge. Hashtag who cares why? It's season 6, episode 23, Fury.
That is a fantastic hashtag. Who cares why?
Well, that's the reason people don't like the episode, right? Which is
right, exactly.
They're like, well, it doesn't, nobody explains why she is this way and what's happened to her in the meantime. And I just finished rewatching the episode before we started recording, and my response to that is, who cares? It's a great episode. You get a lot of fun callbacks to the first season of Voyager. Tuvok walks into the cargo bay and he thinks he sees 7 of 9 standing against the wall, and he blinks and it's just a wall, and he turns and there's Lieutenant Carey, who you've not seen for 5 seasons by that point. Samantha Wilder makes a comeback, who doesn't show up in a ton of episodes after the first couple of seasons, with the Once Upon a Time being one of the big exceptions to that. They put Janeway's hair back in the bun. The Doctor is far more acerbic than he is in later seasons. It just felt like a really fun way of celebrating the show's history. The Vidians come back, and the Kes storyline is kind of cool, actually. I mean, this idea that, she blames the crew for something. And one of the things I like about it is that she doesn't really tell them why. It's such a TV trope that it's like, I don't like you, and now I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes telling you why.
Right.
When in real life, people don't really do that. If you just kind of, you just do whatever you're going to do. And so I am a big fan of Fury. I think the episode's really well constructed. It starts in the future, they go back to the past, and they end up in the future again, which plays to a lot of the kind of Voyager time travel-y tropes. But I like it a lot. I can see why lots of people don't, but all of that just kind of washes off.
That is a fantastic defense of Fury. I love it, along with Heather, who picked it as well. I forgot about the Vidians come back. All that part's all really fun. That's pretty cool, and there's some great special effects too. They really shot for the sky with the walls blowing up behind Kes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that is cool. I am adding this and Tattoo to my list of rewatches from this episode to look at in a different. Oh, and Darkling, right? So those 3 so far. Maybe I'll add Heather's final pick too. Heather, any other final words on Fury?
Well, like you mentioned, people people have issues as to why Kes actually is so angry and why she came back. I got the feeling watching the episode that she doesn't even remember why.
Right.
Like, she's just been out on her own and she's angry and pissed off. And if you remember back in before and after, when they were talking about Kes aging, the Ocampans get to that point in their life cycle where they start to lose their memory.
The Morologium.
Yeah, I think she remembers Voyager, but she doesn't remember why she left or what exactly happened there, so it turns into anger.
And if you're really desperate for an explanation, Kirsten Beyer, the Star Trek Discovery writer, was one of the authors who penned a trio of novels for Voyager's 20th anniversary, I think, or 10th anniversary, I don't know, 2004, I think they came out, called the String Theory books, and that has in it an explanation for Fury Kes.
I love it. Best defense of Fury ever, and I can't wait to rewatch it now. Fantastic. All right, Heather, what's your number one pick for Voyager Guilty Pleasure Episodes?
Okay, number one, 5-word summary is everything I went through was meaningless. # science versus faith. It is season 3, episode 7, Sacred Ground.
What a cool pick. A fantastic pick.
And I was amazed when, like I said, I based my lists on ratings on IMDb.
Right.
Out of all of my picks, this one was actually rated the lowest at 59%.
Really?
Yes. I sat there and went, oh my God, how can it be that low? Because I love this episode.
That's amazing to me. I was going to say I'm surprised it's in the under your fits your Prime Directive, but it's also the bottom of your picks. Wow, of the IMDb list. Wow. So why do you love it? This is such an awesome pick.
I love the journey, the exploration that Janeway goes on inside herself, and she's such a scientist, and to put herself out there in a religious situation where she has to try to commune with the gods in order to save a member of her crew, and even the fact that it's not actually a Starfleet member of her crew, that it's Kes, makes it more awesome to me that she's willing to go through the ritual or the journey and essentially endure 3 days of hell and then still not have an answer and really have to search herself and her own beliefs and kind of challenge her scientific reasoning versus just having faith that these gods will help save her. So I think the play between I'm a big fan of the play between science and faith, and that really shines through in this episode.
That is, that's cool. And I said I'm adding this to my rewatch list because I did think about this one and put it on my secondary systems, but I didn't think. I knew people don't love this episode, but I'm really surprised it's that low on IMDb. Alex, what's your take on Sacred Ground?
I like it. I would never have thought that this would have been so, lowly rated. And I probably would have put it somewhere in the middle of the pack for the show as a whole. I also like the science versus faith aspect of it, especially because, it's the Janeway character who ostensibly is a scientist turned commanding officer. And it's something they don't really explore a whole lot, is kind of the sciencey background that she has. I mean, it's referenced a lot, but it does kind of fall by the wayside to the fact that she is the captain and has to be the captain. And so anything that kind of pulls that piece of her personality out more, and especially because it then tests that piece of her personality.
Right.
I'm a big fan of this. And I thought I don't remember who the actress was, but the actress who played the monk, the female monk who was sort of guiding Janeway on her journey, I thought was really fabulous.
I'm not sure how to begin.
Do you want me to give you orders, Captain?
I'll do whatever you ask of me.
I see. So you think that this is just a matter of doing what you're told?
No. I'm sure there's spiritual significance behind the challenges involved.
Challenges? That's what you expect.
I don't have any idea what to expect. I've studied a number of ritualistic societies, and many of the rites have commonalities. This one may be completely different. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary.
I don't doubt that. But do you realize that all of this is meaningless? That the only thing that matters is finding your connection to the spirits?
I'm going to make every effort to do that. But I didn't come here for personal enlightenment. I'm trying to save a member of my crew.
That's a worthy cause. I hope the spirits listen to you.
And one of the most powerful parts of this episode is right at the end when the doctor, they're sitting in sick bay and the doctor's explaining to Kes the science behind how she got saved because he has come up with a reasoning, and Janeway's just sitting there absolutely silent. And you can tell, as much as the doctor's explaining the science, she doesn't quite believe it herself because of what she went through.
Yeah, that's another great point. And this episode directed by Robert Duncan McNeil. So I remember it was one of his maybe only Voyager episodes, or one of his few. Okay, maybe it was his first. I know it was I just remember it being a Robbie Duncan McNeil director episode. Okay, let's round out round one with my number one pick and my 5 words and a hashtag. Familiar plotting but expertly executed hashtag +1 intergalactic driving test. It is Voyager Season 7, right near the end of Voyager's run. The episode is Natural Law. And most people probably don't even remember this episode because it was right at the end. And it's the episode where Seven and Chakotay end up inside this compound that's protected on a planet with an indigenous species inside the compound that the people on the planet actually can't get to. And it's a great conservationist message in this episode that I just think they really executed really well. And one of the reasons I love this episode, I mean, I love the production design. I love the alien language that they use with hand gestures. I love the journey that Seven goes on, originally being like, what do we care? What can we learn from these people? And then seeing how much she actually does learn from them. But I love the moment at the end of this when these generally nice aliens that they've been dealing with the whole episode of the Dotians, they know that there's this compound protected on their planet that they can't get into because some aliens set up this force field to protect the Ventu people. As soon as the force field goes down, they are in there with their excavation teams and they're talking about everything they can do to help the Ventu and change everything and take advantage of the resources underneath in this area. And they're all ready to start exploiting them with the best of intentions, but it's just the worst kind of colonialism about to happen. And they really execute this really, really well. So I love this episode. I also love the fact that I am a C7 apologist. I'll take Janeway Chakotay. That's fine too. But I have no problem with Chakotay and Seven. And this episode proves to me why I have no issue with them. So their chemistry is great. And one last point, it's got Autumn Reeser is a great actress who's been in a lot of great shows. OC, well, not great shows. Wi-Fi was not a great show, but she's a pretty well-known actress. And she played the alien Ventu in this, and it was like literally like her first acting job. And I really thought she was impressive in this episode with the way the production team shot it and the lighting, and it's your standard indoor set that's supposed to look outdoors, and they really did a great job with it. So I love Natural Law. I'm curious what you guys think. Heather, what's your take on it?
I really enjoy this episode. I love, like you said, the journey that Seven goes on when she starts out not wanting to have anything to do with the people. And then at the end, she's their biggest champion in wanting to make sure they stay conserved. And the fact that they were put under this force field for a reason. So that's probably my favorite part of this episode. I'm not a C7 person.
No, of course you're not. Nobody is. So.
I do like the dynamic between the two of them and how
Yep.
Especially how the Bintu girl kind of wins Seven over.
So many people just turned off this podcast when I said C7. Alex, how about you? What's your take on this one?
I agree with all of these points, and we haven't yet talked about the best part of the episode, which is Tom Paris and the Ladosian driving.
Yes, I put it in my hashtag, and that is a fun storyline. Really,
it's so fun,
really clever.
Especially the last scene when he's in the middle of his final test, and Janeway, tells him to go pick up, to go beam up, the 7 in Chakotay and all the piece of technology, and the driving instructor, and he's like, starts doing the crazy maneuvers, and the driving instructor tells him that he's failed the test.
It's fantastic. It's really, really clever. I love at the beginning where he's trying to be nice to the guy and kind of smooth talking. The guy's like, no, we have like 3 days of course study before we even get into the cockpit. It's
Tom, you joining us? Oh, that's right. You have to go to pilot school.
I hear the course takes days.
Yeah, for most people, but I did a little research. If the instructor agrees, you can skip the lessons and go right to the test. So I will be seeing you in a couple of hours.
You have to admire his optimism.
I am Mr. Clegg, the flying instructor. Are you Lieutenant Paris?
He is. It's an honor to meet you, sir. May I show you to the Delta Flyer?
Why?
So you can explain what I did wrong and then administer the test.
It sounds to me like you need lessons in patience as well.
Oh, Tom is very patient, sir.
Never impulsive.
Take all the time you need. You'll enjoy the extra attention.
Well, I'm pleased to hear it. We'll start with a review of safety procedures.
All right, let's run through some secondary systems really quick. I'm sure there's some more out there. Alex, how about you? What's on your secondary system list? Rattle off a few.
4, Cathexis from season 1.
Ooh.
To add yet another season 3 episode to the list, False Prophets. And then 2 from season 7, Drive and Renaissance Man. Renaissance Man was originally on my list, but then I decided that I thought the episode itself was too good because I really like Renaissance Man. So I moved it off and into secondary systems.
That's cool. Renaissance Man is tricky. I like it. That's right after Natural Law. And I had Drive on my list as well. Heather, how about you?
I had 3 on my secondary systems. The Cloud from season 1. The Barge of the Dead from season 6. Because I really liked the exploration into the Klingon underworld. And I had to be the one who mentioned this. I had Threshold.
Oh, right. Well, of course. I'm glad somebody mentioned Threshold because I didn't put it on my list or secondary systems, but that is the ultimate Voyager guilty pleasure if you like it.
It definitely is. I will defend it to the point it's not a bad episode. It just gets off the rails about the time Tom Paris pulls out his tongue.
Yes, that is the absolute truth. You nailed it. All right, I had on my secondary systems time and again. I actually really like that episode. Displaced. I also had Drive. I had Nemesis as well. That's probably a little too good to be on the list. And I like Heroes and Demons and Initiations as well. I had a long list of like episodes that they don't get a lot of respect, but I think they're too good to be on the list. And I'll rattle those off really quick. Riddles, 30 Days, Unity, Workforce, Learning Curve, and Investigations. And then I had one more list, 4 episodes that I probably should have had Darkling on this list too. No, I shouldn't because it's not good enough. But these are all great episodes that are just not enough fun to watch because they're too creepy or too depressing. Remember, The Thaw, Alter Ego, and Real Life.
Yeah.
All episodes that don't rank too high. Okay, that's a lot of secondary systems. We love it. This was an awesome deep cut conversation on Voyager, but now it's time to recap our picks in our regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, so let's run down our picks really quick. Alex, go through your top 5 list.
Okay, number 5, Concerning Flight. Number 4, Rise. number 3, Q in the Gray, number 2, Darkling, and number 1, Fury.
Fantastic, Liz. You had 2 from season 3 and 1 each from season 2.
I had 3 from season 3. Rise, Q in the Gray, and Darkling are all season 3.
I missed that. Rise, yes. That's 3 from season 3. Jeez. Heather, how about your list?
At number 5, I had Tattoo. Number 4 was Fury. Number 3 was Once Upon a Time. Number 2 was Fairhaven. And number 1 was Sacred Ground.
Fantastic. So you spread it around. You had 1 from season 2 and 3 and 5 and then 2 from season 6.
Yes.
And my list was, my number 5 pick was Rise. Number 4, Once Upon a Time. Number 3, The Disease. Number 2, Parturition. And number 1, Natural Law. And I had 1 each from season 2, season 3, and season 7, and 2 from season 5. All right, so we have 3 duplicates, and the breakdown for seasons overall, none from season 1, and then 2 from season 2, 5 from season 3 leading the way, 1 from season 4, 3 each from season 5 and season 6, and 1 from season 7. And we had 2 Samantha Wildman mentions. So we love Samantha Wildman on TrekRanks. Great character. All right, as we do every week, we've once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
This week's temporal causality loop is short and sweet. So we say this every week to everybody that you should check out our back catalog of our episodes, especially if you're a newcomer to TrekRanks or if you're listening for the first time. We think that one of the strengths here at our show is that each episode is pretty timeless, and you can listen to our shows in any order, and they never really get dated. So if you're familiar with Star Trek, you can find a bunch of different topics that are fun and go back and listen to them and check out our old episodes. So we recommend you do that. Our entire back catalog is available at TrekRanks.com and at the tricordertransmissions.com. And I bring that all up because this week's temporal causality loop is sending us all the way back to the summer of 2017 and episode 6 of the TrekRanks podcast, which is still one of our favorites. It's where the soup round originated. It's our top 5 food moments with our good buddy Adam Drozen. So last week, one of our listeners, Jeff Owen, who is at the Jeff Owen on Twitter, he went back and listened to our top 5 food moments and sent in his own list, and it was so great. I immediately wanted to make it our temporal causality pick this week. So Jeff's picks were, and I love this because his number 5 pick didn't exist when we did the show. It is number 5 from Vaulting Ambition, the Kelpian Stew.
Oh, geez.
Fantastic pick. That didn't exist when we did the show. I love it.
Very true.
And that's the great thing about Star Trek is they're always making more.
We love that. And number 4 was from Broken Bow, and his quote is "Anything is possible." And of course, is the reference to T'Pol eating her breadstick with a fork. I love that. Number 3, I like this because I just picked this on the TNG Guilty Pleasure episode. It's Haven, and it's the awkward dinner scene from that episode. And an even more awkward dinner scene, also from TNG Season 1, Conspiracy.
Oh,
so
gosh.
We all know what that food moment is.
Yes.
And his number 1 pick, which I really didn't plan this at all, is from an episode that I just picked on our Voyager Guilty Pleasures, and it is Neelix and Tom's spaghetti fight from Parturition. So, fantastic list. We really like getting an old list from someone who's listening to some of our older episodes, because, like I said, they are timeless, and you can listen at any time. So, as always, that's more than enough to get us out of this week's temporal causality loop. So we want to thank everyone again for all their great feedback, and keep those lists coming to us at TrekRanks, so we can retweet them. But also we want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 Voyager Guilty Pleasure episodes and give us a call We'd love to hear from you directly. You can call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we're doing a topic that we've been waiting to get to for a while because I'm a huge animal lover, as I mentioned before. So we're finally going to try and do our top 5 pets. It's that simple. Now, we're not talking about gormaganders or sentient space creatures like Gomtu. We're talking about straight up pets. So, Alex and Heather, if you're thinking about your top 5 Star Trek pets, what's the first thing to jump into your mind? Alex?
The first thing that jumps into my mind is the story that Martok tells in You Are Cordially Invited about how he used to have a pet Targ until he met his wife. And one day she let the Targ out and he disappeared off into the wilderness and was never seen again. Because J.G. Hertzler tells that story really well.
Oh, I always hated Sorella for that.
Uh-huh.
Terrible. Heather, how about you?
Well, I'm obviously a cat person, so the first thing I went to is Data and his cat Spot. And his epic ode to Spot.
Yes, one of the great pet moments in Trek history, for sure.
Or Chester.
Chester is for sure going to be highly considered on my list. I love Chester.
Yes, I love Chester as well.
Honor among thieves. All right. Awesome job. Before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to our awesome guests tonight, Alexander Perry and Heather Kirby. Great job. I love this topic. Any final thoughts from you guys, Alex?
You should never feel guilty watching Star Trek Voyager.
That is perfect. And Heather, I hope you had fun on your first of many TrekRanks appearances, I hope.
I had a blast on my very first podcast appearance of all things.
That's fantastic. You would never guess. I mean, you almost never guess with anybody. We're just talking. I mean, just hanging out, 3 friends talking about Star Trek.
Exactly.
All right, and remind everybody again about your community fan organization you guys have started.
Yes, it's called Fans Together. You can find the Twitter page at together_fans. And like I said, we are planning a bunch of different fundraising campaigns to kick off over the holiday season to raise money for a couple different organizations. One is Habitat for Humanity. The other one is for the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a children's hospital in London. So keep an eye out for our fundraising campaigns. And if any other fans or fan groups have a cause that they want to get behind, we will gladly help you out and set up a fundraiser.
That is cool. I know you guys are just launching that, so I hope it takes off.
Hope so too.
Great job, guys. Thanks again, everyone, for engaging with us here on episode 42 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Excellent, Mr. Paris. Now, come about slowly.
Janeway to Paris, respond.
Captain, I would appreciate it if you wouldn't interrupt my student during his examination.
I'm sorry, but something's come up.
What is it, Captain?
Tom, I'm sending you some encrypted orders.
Yes, ma'am.
This is highly irregular. You're going much too fast.
Yes, sir. I'm in a bit of a hurry.
If you have any desire to pass this test, you'll reduce your speed immediately.
I wish I could do that, sir. I really do. Sit back and enjoy the ride.
I am sorry to inform you, Mr. Paris, but you have failed this examination. You will no longer be allowed to operate a vessel within Ladosian space.
Something tells me that's not going to be a problem.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.